Japan only has two major religions, those being Shintoism and Buddhism, while the majority of the population, around 65%, identify as non-religious or not specifically affiliated. Around 90% of funerals performed are Buddhist. This is despite the fact that the adherents of each major religion are relatively equal. Despite 90% of the funerals being Buddhist, only around 2 to 4% are Shinto. Major issue with Shinto funerals in comparison to Buddhist funerals is there's no unified definition as to what Shintoism even is. The only unifying belief among all practitioners being the belief in kami, which also varies depending on who says it, but it's generally agreed to be the embodiment of all things, or a spiritual embodiment of all things. Additionally, there is no defining text. Unlike Abrahamic religions, the Kojiki is the closest thing to it, but it only details mythological foundation rather than the daily lives of practitioners. Shinto funerals are generally different from traditional American funerals in the fact that the wake is held within the home rather than outside through a funeral home. Decorations are simpler than Buddhist funerals, with the home turning itself into a Shinto shrine. Some of the most prominently seen decorations being sakaki branches and shide, and similar to the entrance of a shrine, a bamboo basin and dipper used to purify the hands of the mourners. One of the first and most commonly observed rituals is wetting the lips of the deceased to symbolically mark the passage of deceased from the world. This ritual is considered the last drink because it shows that the dead cannot consume any water like the living anymore and have then passed on to be kami, who are only offered water symbolically. A disposable chopstick with cotton or cloth is drenched with water and brushed over the lips of the deceased, though this was traditionally done by family members and mourners. With 80% of all Japanese deaths occurring in hospital setting, doctors and nurses have been permitted to perform this as well. This practice did originally come from Buddhism, as it came from the story of Buddha asking for water when he died. It was with the close proximity of Buddhism and Shintoism together, then later integrated into Shintoism later. Death pollution and the impurity of death used to be a common fear in Japanese society, but has gradually waned out. That fear of the impurity of death, though, did develop the yukan, which is the washing of the corpse after death, also traditionally observed by the family, and before modern medical science used to be a simple bath, as the living would do, but with the development of medical science turned into a bath of alcohol and gauze wrapping. Following a death, the death must be reported to the family's kami via the kamidana, a shrine dedicated to all kami in the household. But if a specific shrine was prayed at for health or a cure, a mourner must be sent out to that shrine to indicate the death to the kami of that shrine. Announcing the death to the kami also includes announcing death to ancestors, specifically because through death they are transmuted into kami, and this specifically is often done through the miramaya or the tamaya, which are familial specific shrines. After the announcement, though, a white sheet of paper has to be placed over the tamaya or kamidana to protect the kami from the impurities of death. The chief mourner, generally the person closest to the deceased, usually a spouse, places the paper over the sodesha, which is the part of the kamidana that houses the tablets dedicated to the kami. During the wake, the body is usually laid out with its head facing north, or it could be facing right, which is another loan from Buddhist funerals. The face is covered with a white cloth, and a simple screen is generally placed behind the bed. Placed on the bed is a small low table with offerings for the deceased. These are usually sakaki, salt, sake, water, and washed rice. Additionally, a momori katana, protective sword or knife, can be placed with the tip facing towards the feet of the deceased. For women, though, this can be replaced with a mirror, but it does not have to be. But it's usually more a deflection than a fight to dying in women. These altars may also carry the favorite foods of the deceased. The encoffining process involves the mourners lifting the futon, the bed that the body was laid upon, into the coffin. Once laid out in the coffin, another futon is placed on top, but symbolic items may be placed in between to further personalize the service. These items can be expected for if traditional American funerals had symbolic items such as like books, money, dolls, and jewelry. But the umbilical cord of the deceased is also very common to be placed in coffins for Shinto funerals. Until the coffin is removed from the house, offerings are made twice a day, in the evening and the morning. A priest is seldom present unless he is blessing the coffin process, but otherwise will not be at the funeral until burial. A hand-washing rite occurs where the mourners will purify their hands and mouths numerous times over the course of the funeral when dealing with the body. While this is just an overview of rites observed in Shinto funerals, there's many obvious differences in just these few examples from American funerals. Another example being that autopsy is generally discouraged, as any alteration of the body after death, with the exception of cremation, is generally not acceptable and is considered to impede the soul's transition to the spirit world. The Shinto funeral is also longer and more intensive for mourners than our traditional funerals, most likely due to the longer historical practice than American funerals, which only developed 100 some odd years ago.